Hi, and welcome back. We are in Module 4 in our 4th week of our Newborn Touch Instructor Program. And this module, we're going to be talking about communication pathways, the way that our babies learn to communicate with their visual pathway, their auditory pathway, and how the development of language occurs. So get your baby so that you can practice with us. And we will begin with just a brief overview of these communication pathways. We know that now I interchange the words. Sometimes I'll say auditory and sometimes I'll say sound, sometimes I'll say hearing, but we all know that that's the same pathway. So the auditory pathway are experiences that come to our babies through their ears. And then the visual pathways form based on experiences that come to our babies through their eyes. And we know that 80% of the activity in our brain is from what we take in visually. That's how powerful those visual pathways are for us. That's why if we see something that's kind of traumatic, it just stays with us and stays with us. Likewise, we see something really beautiful and enriching, and that stays with us as well. So our visual pathways are very, very powerful when they reach the brain, and the brain processes them and stores them into memory and other places. And then the language pathway, our babies are beginning to develop language already. So we know that. Let's go back and just ground this in our brain sensitivity. So we want to make sure that we have a clear understanding that the audio and visual pathways, hearing and seeing, you can see they begin well before birth, and they really don't peak at birth. I mean, that ear architecture and that eye architecture is pretty much in place when the baby is born. Isn't that amazing? And then it continues to develop until by about the second birthday, those pathways, that architecture, that framework is already in place. That's how important this work is on our visual experiences and the auditory experiences that we provide for our newborns during the 4th trimester. Then the third pathway, the third communication pathway, is this orange line, and that's our language pathway, which again begins developing way before birth. So let's take a look at what is really happening. And we have our neurons that are striving to reach out across the brain and connect with other neurons. It's so fascinating to me because the neurons do in their own way what we as humans attempt to do, try to do. We just want to connect, don't we? We just want to reach out and connect. And that's what's happening with the neurons. So the baby is born with millions of neurons during the developmental process in utero, during prenatal development. These neurons are firing and multiplying, and those pathways are already developing. So the neurons are already seeking out other neurons and building those pathways. It looks something like this. It is the neuron reaches out. So here's the neuron, and we have it reaches out through this part of it's called the dendrites. And so the dendrites reach out in a kind of a spider fashion, and they reach out and they're trying to connect. And when they connect, so this neuron has now connected to this neuron through the dendrites. When they connect, it forms an axon. An axon connects the neurons together. And this is what's fascinating. Then what happens is the brain begins to bundle when that's repeated. So it looks something like this. Let's say that my fingers are the neurons inside the newborn's brain or inside the baby even before birth. And the thumb, this little thumb neuron, is trying to send a signal out and get a reaction, get a response. So the thumb sends the signal over to the pinky, and then the pinky sends the signal back. And let's say, for the purposes of this illustration, that the caregiver is singing a song to baby before baby's born. So the caregiver is singing a sweet lullaby, and the baby hears it and then hears it again. And now that axon has formed between those two neurons, and the neuron sends out a signal to the brain asking for myelin. Here's our myelin. So asking for myelin so that myelin will come, because the signal is this neuropathway is important. So we want to bundle it, and we want to put myelin as our bundling agent. So myelin comes around, and then this forms a myelin sheath. And that neuropathway is then firm and fixed in the newborn's brain. And there are millions of these pathways, millions and millions of them. So what we want to do with our enriched experiences with our newborns is we want to promote the development of the healthy neuropathways, the positive neuropathways that will enrich babies' development and help quite a bit with bonding and with attachment and with all of the things. So spoiler alert, here we go. What is the optimal environment? Well, it's an environment that looks very much like our Lifeways preschool classrooms, our Waldorf classrooms, other cultures, other images. Perhaps it's those of you who are familiar with the RIE, the Resources for Infant Educare, could provide us some pictures too, but this is a kind of idea of an optimal environment where the sound, the light, the experience is very, very nurturing for our newborns. We're going to pause here for a bit of reflection. So we're at the middle of our course, and it's important that we take time to just take a deep breath, kind of an in-breath moment, and relax. And let me ask you if you will work with me for a little bit. I gave a lot of intention and a lot of thought to how I might communicate with you. So this whole module is about communication. And yes, we're going to talk about how babies learn to communicate. But I also am very interested in deepening our communication. And so when I started looking at this, I pulled out an old tool I used to use in my earlier career. And that was when we ask ourselves 5 whys, like, why am I doing this? Why is it important? Why is it important to do this now? Why do I feel like it'll make a difference? So I asked myself the 5 whys. So one why, as far as having time to communicate and reflect with you, is that I really feel it's important that we collect the memories of this pilot while they're unfolding. We all know what it's like to have an experience, and then later at the end of the experience, someone says, oh, well, what was that like? And then we're like, well, can't quite remember that far back, or it gets a little misty. So that's one reason, is so that we can collect the memories now. And another is I'd love to have a basis for improving your experience for the rest of our time together. And it also, reflection, stopping midstream and reflecting really assists us with that healthy exchange. So you're receiving from Lifeways, from Newborn Touch, you're receiving content and a discounted pricing and a wonderful chance to be in community. And then we're receiving back from you. And I love reading the comments. It's just my favorite part of the day. So this gives us a chance to really kind of stop and take a look at that kind of what kind of experience you're having. And then we know that we're all here. This is my 4th why. We're all here because we want to expand our impact on our collective impact toward our caregivers, the newborns, the families, and the caregivers. And our last why is I want to make sure that I'm addressing your why. So at the beginning of the course, I told you why I created Newborn Touch, why I'm so passionate about this work. You very generously shared back with all of us why you decided to take the course. So I just want to do a little check and see if what you've been experiencing so far is aligned with why you took this course. So the way we're going to do this is at the comment section, I'm going to ask you to respond to 2 simple questions. So think back, if you will, for the first question, think back to the very first time you sat down at your laptop or your computer, or maybe you pulled it up on your phone, but the first time that you logged in and you opened the Newborn Touch Instructor Program, just think back to kind of where you were in your headspace. And if you will, share with us what your understanding of newborn development was at the beginning when you first started. And then the second question, so let me stay with the first question for a second. So what you're doing is just kind of taking a snapshot, sort of a picture of 3 weeks ago when you first began. Then for the second question, you're going to take a snapshot of where you are now as we're about midway through, and then describe your understanding of newborns now. So take a few moments. Thank you so much. I'm so excited and very eager to hear what you have to say and to gain my input from your reflections. So I will see you in the next segment when we go into the auditory development, the hearing of our babies.